All right.
Maybe
We're live.
okay.
Just so you know.
Okay.
Hey, folks, for anyone who's
Hi.
out there joining us, we're currently in a very stuffy attic in South Central.
South Central. Yes, it's South Central,
Yeah.
Vermont Square.
Los Angeles, so you know where we're at. We won't be here long, though. So, yeah, just want to, we'll probably just give a couple more minutes because we know it's cutie pop time. So, just kind of let people come in a little bit, let ourselves get situated, and then we'll get started.
Maybe.
And we'll give a little intro. Anyone that's joining us right now, just give us a little hey on the group chat. We'd appreciate that. Just a little hello. I know we got some viewers here. Don't be shy. Okay, just gonna give a few more minutes, let people settle in. But how's everyone doing so far on this? Is it Wednesday today? Wednesday. This week's going by quick.
Well, I'm doing fine, Pat.
I gotta make sure that the also apologies ahead of time. I am not the most technologically savvy person, so we are kind of figuring this out as we go. So thank you all for being our test subjects for today. So I know that you know, this is a different medium, but I think it's going to be a really good one for Buff Butch and us getting our message out there to more people and making sure that, you know, we start removing these barriers that people have around fitness. This is actually a workshop. It's actually one of my favorite workshops I've done. I've recently started doing it with Edxie as well. I think we did it together the first time
At the Black Rose Book Fair.
and that was last month, right?
March. Wait.
No, that wasn't March. It was May.
May.
May. So this is something we both started getting into together. I think it's going to be different than what you all have seen in terms of fitness. So yeah, how about we get started? So once again, thank you so much for joining our webinar, Korean Fitness Revolutionary Tool. I'm Pat.
I'm Edxie.
And we're gonna go ahead and just jump into this workshop. Okay. Which one do I want to be on? 1 second, sorry. This is why. There we go. It's gonna take you all to a different screen real quick. See if it allows me to. All right. Hope you can all. Hopefully you can all see that right now. So again, if you're just popping in, welcome to our workshop, Korean Fitness as a Revolutionary Tool. We're going to start out by introducing ourselves a little bit and you know, letting you know a little bit about, you know, who we are and why we're actually doing this work. I'll go first. My name's Pat Manuel. I've been a personal trainer for about 10 years now. I started Buff Butch back in the spring of 2013, and the reason why I decided to start this project was I was going through a leadership program, and one of the main things that we were doing was basically see what privileges we had in the community and ways that we could leverage that to help people. I'm a 5-time national amateur boxing champion in the female division. I was an Olympic trial participant in the first ever women's boxing Olympic boxing trials, and it was this experience that gave me an excellent privilege of having access to elite level training that a lot of people do not have, especially because as an athlete, you aren't really trained in terms of like physical training in the same way as someone just going into a normal gym. You're really focused more on performance. So it isn't about trying to aesthetically look a certain way. It's all about being better in your sport. And I found that this type of training actually worked well for training people who weren't really interested in falling into a binary aesthetic. They weren't trying to adhere to normative beauty standards. They just wanted to basically be stronger and feel more capable in their bodies. So I rolled out this project first online. It was originally focused on my population, the masculine center, because that's who I was used to approaching me for fitness advice. As I started doing some in-person trainings, community trainings, I was approached by people of different gender identities, and they basically were like, well, can we join too? And at the time I was like, well, yeah, of course, like you should be welcome here, until I realized that the language I was using, having it be a masculine center fitness resource, was just recreating a different form of binary that was excluding a lot of people from having access to strength training. So since then, I've kept the name Buff Butch just because I'm really bad at names and I think it's catchy and people remember it. But we have since become more of a queer fitness resource that works with a lot of different gender identities, which is why I brought Edxie in to help me out with the training. So you want to take over?
Hi, this is Edxie speaking. So yeah, I pretty much got on board because, well, last year in December, or actually in September, I started my hormone replacement therapy, and I really wanted to, I didn't want to dwindle down into like just like depression mode while on the hormones. So I started working out a lot more when Pat had assembled a kind of training program with Buff Butch and assembled other queer identified folks, other trans and gender nonconforming identifying folks to just, you know, commit one day a week to working out together, and then throughout the week on our own, you know, do the routines that we learn each week when we're with each other. And it was a really great experience. There was a lot of really amazing breakdowns that I saw in terms of, you know, Pat interrogating, yeah, just these binaries that have been imposed on us. There was a lot of reclamation of my femininity for me, and just being in like queer, trans, gender nonconforming, people of color spaces working out was very liberating. And yeah, so like as somebody who stuck with coming and assembling with them, Pat saw that, you know, I had perspective, particularly feminine perspective that he hadn't, you know, thought of. The name Buff Butch didn't necessarily sit with me as much, but I often have these conversations with people who do come up with names for organizations and collective work. And often at times, what's most annoying for me is if you have a name that centers a particular identity and you're doing absolutely nothing to uplift and support that identity, that name doesn't mean crap. So there's not really anything in the name, you know. There's other projects that I work in that have particular identities that are spotlighted that could actually apply for a lot of different people's experiences and social categories and descriptive political identities. So I'm just really involved with this project now to, yeah, to bring like a femme perspective, as well as like also to, yeah, just in terms of the reclamation of my own femininity. There has been a lot of trauma throughout my life and like trying to get rid of it. And now these days, like I'm trying to reclaim that and then acknowledge, you know, so much femphobia and queerphobia within certain spaces that, you know, people aren't really allowed to necessarily be themselves. So that's why I'm part of it.
Yeah, I'd also like to add that Edxie's also good at calling me in to make sure that like I'm on my shit properly, which is something I'm really thankful for. You know, we have this project being, you know, oppression-free fitness, but it's really more of a it's more of a concept that we are trying to reach towards. We are trying our best to be as inclusive as possible, but it's consistently a work in progress. So I think there's been a huge step forward in having Edxie on the team. So I just want to publicly thank you for sharing in the labor of making this accessible to people.
Mm-hmm.
So the main thing why this project has come about is so many people came up to me, especially when I started being more vocally out in the community around like how to actually get involved in fitness. My introduction is very different than other people because I came through an athletic background. I did get involved in sports originally to help with gender dysphoria, but it was something that I excelled at and stuck with. So when I was I was hearing people talking to me about their issues in the gym, they were things that I didn't really have to deal with originally, because going into a boxing gym, I was just seen there as an athlete, and it was seeing what I could do to be better, especially as I was winning. So it became a way of like keeping me in that winning column. So I started hearing more and more about all these horrors of the fitness industry, and I started experiencing them as a personal trainer, because I was being conditioned to basically replicate these things. Replicate all the things that people were telling me, hey, I don't want to do, in terms of like body shaming, fat shaming, immediately assuming what someone's goals are based upon their perceived gender. So I just want everyone to take a moment, since I've learned that I cannot see the Google chat. So I'm sorry if you all were shouting out and I can't see it. Just take a moment to really reflect on what are the negative connotations and experiences that come up for you when you think about fitness. Just take that moment for a second. And Edxie, would you like to share like what comes up for you in terms of the negatives?
Negative connotations and experiences I've had within like gym spaces, or even like PE, physical education spaces, is where I got most of my trauma from. Yeah, locker room situations are unbearable when you're a trans person. Like, even before I even knew that I was trans, it was unbearable to be in the same space as like, yeah, people that you don't identify with. So that's one. And then, you know, when it comes to, yeah, I've been in gyms before. I've been a member of gyms like yonks ago, and I feel that there's always a policing of like my body, or feeling like, you know, everybody who's here is relatively fit. There aren't any, you know, fat people. There aren't any like more shapely people that don't look like they've been doing this for like decades. You know, it's just really alienating when you go to gyms. So that's my negative experiences.
And those are ones we often hear.
Yeah.
Locker rooms suck, like especially before I started medically transitioning, and when I started going into spaces that weren't boxing gyms, definitely getting the policing there. This is usually when we're doing the live workshops, when everyone suddenly opens up and starts like spilling out all the things that they've been holding in terms of their anger towards fitness, and realizing like there's a lot of resentment, because it represents so many of the oppressions we deal with daily in regards to our bodies, kind of like funneled into one specific space. But I think it's also important to discuss the positives that also come from fitness. As someone who literally has had their life transformed for the better as a result of being involved in sports and fitness, I think it's something to really highlight. So take this moment for yourself as well to think of what are the positives that come up for you in terms of fitness. Like even if you haven't experienced it yet, maybe some positive that you think can come out of fitness, or that you're hoping for fitness. And as someone, for me, what fitness does, when I say it really saved me. I was having a lot of mental health issues while going through puberty. I didn't really have the language to know that I was trans, and I just knew that I felt out of control when puberty hit, and it really was sports and being involved in actively shifting my body to represent something, not only in terms of the way it looked, but in terms of the way it performed, being proud around what my body's could accomplish and being able to basically get accolades from it as a result of me being a top athlete and being able to travel the world. That really helped me kind of handle going through that traumatic period. And it definitely is something that it's always been a big part of my identity for my masculinity is actively being able to control what that looks like for me specifically. Do you want to add any positive experiences you've had?
Positive experiences would probably be, I mean, ooh. It's hard to think of positive experiences within like fitness industry as an industry.
I'm still a part of that cog.
But yeah, like I have you know, definitely working out, it has been, regardless of like, you know, all the side traumas that you experience, it's definitely been helpful in terms of like, yeah, that training and that exercise that you get, like also alleviating stress and everything. So this stress relief has been something for me. I haven't really met a lot of people who you know, not just like just people in general. So I haven't built like a community within gyms or anything, but I think stress relief is important, and that's something that I've experienced.
Okay. So this next slide, I basically did a Google search on what fitness pops up. And these are the image when I put in, because fitness works within a binary, fitness men. These are the images that popped up on the first on the Google search. Right, like these were the specific images that popped up. As you can see, there's a very similar aesthetic build for every person involved here. We have one of our famous before and after pictures of an unhappy person who's heavier and then smiling as he's ripped. Otherwise, basically fitness models shown up. So these are what, you know, we're conditioned to see as images of fitness. So it's what happened when I typed in fitness for women. As you can see, these were the top searches. These weren't things that I was actively looking for to demonstrate. These were literally when I typed in fitness men, fitness women into the Google image searches, these were the ones that popped up. As you can see, like these are just constantly reinforcing very specific aesthetics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I mean, obviously it's like hella binary, hella white. You know, and these are people who are, yeah, already fit. There aren't any bodies that any of us can really relate to or look at and we're like, that's me, you know, I don't see my reflections in these images.
And I don't want to even body shame any of these images. These are perfectly acceptable images if that's what you want. But I think that there's something alienating when we type in these images and we see nothing that really reflects ourselves, or actually sometimes reflect the things that we're actually actively fighting against. You know, in terms of fitness, there's been like a recent trend around specifically, and I'm using air quotes, you can't see me, women's fitness, and and you know, strong is the new skinny, but still seeing that strong isn't about necessarily how much weight you can pull, but rather like looking very much more like the woman in the center, who's very lean and muscular and having that 10% body fat. You know, we're not really seeing anything about accomplishments, but rather just reinforcing like the aesthetic value over and over and over. Yeah. So it's not even that we're seeing what Olympic lifters look like, what wrestlers look like, what even, you know, NFL linemen look like in terms of like divergence in bodies. We're just seeing what we've been conditioned to think is strong, which is really just a different form of thin. Okay, so why is there such an emphasis on these, you know, unrealistic body images? Because let me be honest too around this. Those most of the pictures are fitness models. Fitness models go through something very similar that us boxers do in terms of making weight. They get photo prepped ready, which means that that's not usually the body that they're walking around with. In addition to there being lighting and, you know, with Photoshop being around, that's used as well. They actually start cutting weight and manipulating their body to lean out as much as possible. So we're shown these images that are actually, it's not healthy for us to hold regularly all the time, and seeing those as the pinnacle. So it's basically setting ourselves up for a failure. So why is this happening? And, you know, one word, capitalism. Basically, as you see up there, the fat loss industry is $61.6 billion industry and is growing. They basically are setting up products out there to reinforce unrealistic expectations. And then when people fail at them, which is most likely going to happen, the percentage of people who have the results, you even see a little asterisk underneath a lot of the products are out there. These results aren't typical. They're going to try something else. So you basically are keeping people in this shame cycle to keep spending and investing money into an industry that's really looking for you to fail the entire time and isn't really looking for you necessarily to feel good about yourself, but more about shelling out more money so that you can chase this unrealistic, you know, god or goddess aesthetic that, you know, for most people in the queer and trans community isn't really something that they're interested in.
Yeah, and I feel like when it comes to, I feel like there's a lot that has to do with money making, but it also has a lot to do with power making, with like retaining and keeping power. And, you know, if people continue to recycle these images in this aesthetic that is, you know, the goal, that whiteness or cis hetero-ness is the goal, then that sustains a normativity that people often, yeah, can't ever ascribe to. And yeah, like Pat was saying, you know, like chasing after that forever and ever is never going to, you know, really fulfill a lot of like QT pop folks. It's not going to, you know, fill any sort of void. It's actually going to, you know, run down our spirits. So I think it's really, really important that like we actually, as people of color, as queer and trans and gender nonconforming people, that we have to like challenge and resist a lot of these aesthetics that are being imposed on us and on our bodies.
So I'm gonna break that down a little bit. I didn't want to stop the flow. So yeah, like this is actually, I personally feel like this is an active tool to keep us down, to basically oppress us. I don't think fitness itself is necessarily supposed to be that way, but the current incarnation is definitely, you know, I think one of the big things about this, like it's actually restricting us from accessing this. And I'm of the mind that like, I don't want to be told that I can't have access to anything that anyone else is. I want to be able to get involved in that too, and have that right. And I think that that's what's being denied a lot with fitness. And one of the main things I look at as a performance athlete, as a boxer, as someone who, you know, prides myself on being strong and capable. I think there's something to be said about fitness the way it is currently actually disempowering populations. It is literally barring people the knowledge to be stronger. And I think when you start looking at that, like who is specifically being allowed these privileges, right? Like I've been fortunate to be able to get through there because of sports, which is very common for a lot of people of color. If you are involved in a sport and they want you to keep winning, then you suddenly get access to this type of training so that you can continue to progress that way. You know, if we're looking at people who are, you know, non-normative, female assigned at birth people in general will have less of this access. People who are male assigned at birth and who do not adhere to masculine normative standards will be not given access to this. And then you start really shaping like who is physically capable, and you can actually over time make a whole group of people weaker.
Yeah, I feel like it's not, you know, you hear so much about the stereotypes of like, just sexual stereotypes regarding like gay men and like how gay men often get laid at the gym and like that's where they get their sex and shit. But sorry, but I just feel that like, you know, even if that was true, there's still like that would be a homonormativity that people who are queer and who are trans don't actually have access to, you know, in terms of like going into a space and being accepted. And, you know, there's still a lot of transphobia in like homonormative spaces. So just like understanding that like all of these intersecting different forms of oppression, like they're happening simultaneously. And then, yeah, like just discussing, reinforcing like other particular isms. I think when I think about isms, I think about the causation of the ism. So much of isms like racism or like sexism, a lot of people like they have these words, but they're not really considering the causations of them, the root causes of them. And the root causes of racism is historically sustained white supremacy, white domination. The root of sexism is historically sustained patriarchy, or, you know, rule of the father, however you want to put it. But like, yeah, just like highlighting that there are actual systems of domination that are causing these oppressions. So not to get hung up on the isms so much as like pointing our fingers at the causations of it. And that's all I wanted to say about it.
Sure. You
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really looking deeper on why is this happening. I think a lot of us are so triggered by fitness that we kind of just block it out and view it as not important, but realizing like this is actually there's reasons behind all this. You know, we talked into about reinforcing gender and sexual stereotypes. Again, that goes into disempowering populations. I definitely think as a person of color who has struggled with, you know, basically racial dysphoria, growing up as multiracial, growing up in a white household, even though I was, you know, told I was attractive and like told that I was loved and smart, like society really has a way of reaching into your brain and making you think that if you don't look a certain way, especially based off of those white aesthetics, that something's wrong with you. So one of the biggest issues, or not biggest issues, but one of the biggest things I've done for myself through fitness is learning that I'm not going to look like those white models, and I'm completely okay with that. That has made me very comfortable with my body and knowing that this is a Black trans body. And I think we very rarely see representations in fitness. You'll see Black men. That's, you know, do you want to even go into why, like, you know, Black male bodies are shown as like this, you know, pinnacle beast of like, you know, ferocity and work ethic, you know, based on the slavery. But we don't really see celebration of Black women. You see things like Serena Williams constantly being called into question around her body. You do not see Black gender nonconforming bodies. And actually, honestly, you don't really see much outside of other people of color as well. Like you very rarely see like Latino fitness models in the same sense. When you generally see Asian fitness models, will be something around like some sort of, you know, martial art. Like it's very narrow on whose bodies are showcased. Like we have very limited representations, especially within the United States, of, you know, who is considered fit, and it's very narrow.
Right. I'm gonna have to like quote Cydia Hartman and say, under structural anti-Blackness, all Black bodies are gender nonconforming, inherently gender nonconforming. But also in terms of like, I like to put the applying white normativity to science and body shaming kind of together, because a lot of the white normativity that is being imposed on queer, trans, gender nonconforming people of color has a lot to do with our bodies, our self-worth. You know, if you're having the state killing off Black people every 14 hours and there being no justice brought to, you know, these tragedies, it's like that says something, that tells us our bodies aren't worthy to have, you know, certain kinds of justice. If we're we're looking at our bodies through the lenses of this white normativity, as well as the science of white normativities, you're gonna have people really, really internalizing this kind of shame, this kind of ways of being that they're not really meant to aspire to be in actuality. You know, our bodies are, a lot of people are shaped very differently, and I've definitely internalized white femininity or white feminine standards, you know, with my weight, and that's something that, like, I'm hoping that I can actually get over when trying to apply, and that takes a lot more. I feel like it takes a lot of inner resistance work, as well as like body resistance work, to like really get over these internalizations that say, you know, we're not worthy or we're not beautiful as is.
And I think when we think of fitness, there's definitely a culture of elitism. We think of fitness as being something that has to be expensive, that it has to be cost you a lot of money, and that it's really something that only the most privileged have access to. I hear frequently from people about like, oh, I'd like to eat well, but I can't afford it. And it's hard for people to really see that it's something that's around them when, one, they're not given the actual knowledge to make decisions that are, you know, quote unquote healthy for them. They aren't given any of the knowledge to create their own programs. They aren't given the knowledge to basically be consuming, especially when you live in areas like, even like here in South Central, where it's a food desert, where there really isn't, there aren't as many options. We're constantly told that you need to have the most expensive things. You need to go to the expensive gym in order to be fit. It makes it really difficult for us to actually realize that, you know, sometimes being in a park, sometimes being in a room is enough to work on fitness. And I think also it ties into like having the ability to actually work on yourself. If you're struggling to survive, you may not be really thinking about like fitness as your priority. You know, if you're struggling to sleep because you're working 3 jobs, you know, the last thing you're thinking about is going to the gym. So sometimes breaking it down and realizing that sometimes just going for a walk, sometimes something, a way of working on your body, and we feel a lot as a personal trainer. A lot of people are like, I'm too busy to work out, because they have this perception that they need to work out 2 hours a day. Now, I work out 4 or 5 hours a day because it's my job. I'm an athlete. I have to for my sport. I would never train anyone or advise anyone to do one who isn't. So we need to also thought that you need to have leisure time to be able to work on yourself too. All right, so we've totally like at least breached the surface of the oppressions that are going on in fitness, because there's some, we'll run out of time if we keep dissecting those. So there are all these barriers that we have to go through in order to get into fitness. So it's kind of like, well, and you know, sometimes that's the point of it. And I really think that that's really important, especially as queer and transgender people, and especially queer and transgender people of color. And one of the biggest things to go together is, you know, accepting your potential and celebration of your competition with another person in terms of trying to lift more, or trying to be faster than this person, or stronger than this person, or look a certain way more than this person. I think fitness is very personal, and it's more about being able to celebrate the small victories you have, whether that's you know, starting out as doing wall push-ups and then being able to go to modified push-ups with your feet, your knees on the floor, or being able to go to a push-up, being able to celebrate those small victories. As a trainer, one of the most gratifying thing for me actually is seeing people who work with me. Edxie, you were definitely one of those people that it was a lot of joy seeing saying like, I can't do push-ups, and then watching them do a normal push-up afterwards. And that may seem small, but I think it's a huge celebration of your potential.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate how well, like when you were talking about the importance of training, I often thought that, yeah, we don't necessarily have to, it's very personal, you know, doing, and like are simultaneously considering, you know, the people in your surroundings. Like, you know, the Buff Bush for me was a very collective experience. So, you know, because like I was doing well, I just wanted to check in with like other people if they were doing well. And that, I think, like, you know, personal, I think when it comes to, yeah, some of these other ideas of like being in workout spaces and like applying, you know, these aesthetics to like that's such a normative, you know, like what we're asking for folks to really challenge is the framework of which you've been like kind of taught to like to train or to view fitness.
So taking control of personal aesthetics, I don't want to make it seem like earlier that, you know, if those are your body aspirations, that's something that you should feel a certain kind of way about. I think it's important to make the decision of what your own personal aesthetics are, and if you want to use fitness as a way to shape that type of body, whatever way that looks like, you should be able to have knowledge for that. That's something that's been very important to me. That's kind of why I originally got into boxing, was based off that aesthetic of wanting to create a masculine image of myself that I had in my head, but I didn't have the language to really vocalize. So I think it's important for people to be able to, when you do want to make changes to your aesthetic, of having, you know, actual knowledge that can help you get there without also being damaging or being shaming.
Mm-hmm. Personal aesthetic, no.
Okay. I mean another huge thing, and this has definitely been one of the main issues why I'm actually invested in this project, and it's definitely changed from over the time, and this is really the main emphasis, is mental health support. I think so many of us in the community, especially as we are at the intersections of so many different oppressions, are suffering a lot of trauma, whether it's personal, societal, or a combination of both, which is, you know, the case for most people. That sometimes you just need a break, and sometimes just investing in yourself and spending that time with yourself, even if it's just going for a walk, even if it's just busting out a few squats, can kind of be the way to recenter yourself. Most of the training that I start out with people, especially beginners, is really about learning to reconnect with your body while being taught how to physically be back into your body. Because I found so many people in the community have really disassociated. And that was definitely something that was happening to me prior to being involved in boxing. I very much wasn't in my body because it was painful. But when I was brought back into it, now I'm at the point where I'm very aware, I'm very conscious of myself. And I'm able to, when I'm feeling bad, like I'm able to, you know, even if it's just starting shadow boxing, it just literally, it actually it secretes happy hormones throughout your body and actually makes you feel a little bit better. Want to add in?
Yeah, just with like mental health support, I feel like it's, yeah, it's so important for people, for folks like us to, you know, do what we can to stay mentally healthy. I think I'm gonna like go into, I want to bring up my particular dysphoria, but like have that, you know, part with the mental health stuff. Mm-hmm. So like I feel like I do often deal with crippling dysphoria, and when I say crippling, I don't use that out of context, because I feel like there are times, yeah, where I literally can't move, or I literally lose function, or, you know, I cannot actually get out of bed in the morning because of particular dysphoria. And so, you know, what can folks do? What can trans folks do to help not only each other out, but like really like do it themselves? Like, and I think that working out really does help with mental health and mental health support to combat dysphoria. But I also think that if you can't do it, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you can't do it, it's really fine. I would advise talking to people about it, talking to other queer and trans people in your area about it, which is why, like, yeah, that collectivizing, you know, our daily oppressions, or like talking about it with other folks, is really, really important, because that's also part of the work too, in terms of mental health, in terms of like emotional health. I think it's really, yeah, really necessary. And that, yeah, for me, combating dysphoria would mean a greater sense of community, where it doesn't feel like you're going through these things alone, that it isn't you, it's a society that pressures you to be something that you're actually not.
Yeah, I mean, dysphoria is really interesting with fitness, I think, because so many of the fitness environments we're in, or just being in our bodies ourselves, can be very triggering for that. I know, and I can only speak for my experience, something for myself, like in addition to creating that body I wanted, it came to a point for me, especially hearing myself represented under women's fitness all the time, or women's boxing, excuse me, all the time, and not relating to that word for a while. I did just hold on to the fact that I was very proud of my accomplishments, which helped me to battle my dysphoria, but there also was a breaking point where I couldn't take it anymore. So I'm never saying that like this is your catch-all to ending any sort of mental or emotional pain. It's more thinking of fitness as a supplement to help whatever self-care practices you're currently involved in. And the last one I want to talk about, I don't think this gets discussed enough, and I think it's something that's really important. Again, as people who face violence frequently, that being able to survive is very important. If we're looking at, you know, the end goal of the situation, I'm involved in a sport where I get hit. My body is trained to take punishment and to be able to dish it out, and I think this is carried over very well for me in society as a Black trans man, of unfortunately having to deal with violent altercations. And I know I've been able to walk away from some because of the type of shape I'm in. So I think it's important of also looking at fitness as a way of not even necessarily always being like physically stronger than someone, but sometimes having the ability to hold on a little bit longer to a bag, or being able to walk a little bit faster to get away, or sometimes just even having the confidence to call a bluff. That can sometimes be the difference for some people.
Right. Survival is really an interesting conversation when it comes to the types of strategies and tactics I use to survive. So when it comes to me, like walking, yeah, street harassment is very real, not only just for trans women, but femmes in general. There's a lot of entitlement that masculine of center, or men, cis and hetero men alike, often feel entitled to either make fun of or point out the deviancy of femininity when it's like a displaced, you know, femininity. But often at times I feel like survival is something that queer and trans, gender nonconforming people have been really like honed in on. I know that a lot of the girls like me often have a lot of like really interesting surprise like talents or like things that they do, particularly because yeah, like there's something in us that instinctually like we have to like you know, train. You know, some of my like friends are like, they're like masters at like self-defense or like, you know, weapons training. You know, I think I was at a party the other night, or threw a party the other night, fundraiser party, and some of my housemates didn't realize that I know how to like wield like a mace, and like and like have, you know, training in that, and have just been training in that. And like part of it is like, you know, fitness, but other parts of it is for our own, you know, protection. And I think I like to think about training in terms of not only strength training, but often stress training. And I've talked about this before, where like, you know, there's certain stresses that I've went through throughout my entire life, or through different moments in my life, that other people haven't really went through. And you know, it just makes you, these kinds of like experiences often makes people very strong, you know. And so like, yeah, just using that to actually apply to your daily life, or apply to your emotions, or to apply to the things that you're doing to like help you actually survive. And yeah.
So just a different way to think about fitness. So just what we're trying to, just, you know, a lot of this project is just trying to get people to rethink what they think is fitness and training.
And I really wanted to, I really talked about this last time we did this workshop, decolonization as survival strategy for like Black and Indigenous peoples who have had to survive for a really long time. A lot of what we do is like inherently like body work. A lot of the things that we do in order to survive, in order to maintain and have like these healing coping mechanisms, have so much to do with our bodies already, whether it be dancing or athleticism or sports. Like, we excelled in that. There's a reason for that. It's like we're just coping 24/7, you know, and that has so much to do with our survival. Like, I think, you know, and decolonization, not just as like some like liberal metaphor, but as an actual, you know, survival strategy, survive against the things that have been attacking us for hundreds of years.
Okay, so I hope that you're like, wow, you know, I'm actually rethinking fitness. I actually think this is something that I want to be involved in. So you may be like, well, okay, we've talked about the oppressions, we've talked about it's important. So how do we actually make this for us? So I think there's some key things. Obviously there's more that we can all come up with. But I think these are some of the key things that we can do to kind of shift away some of the normativity away from fitness. And I think one of the big things is placing an emphasis on performance. And as you see performance in like, go run a sub 6-minute mile and then you're fit. I mean, focusing more on what your body's capable of, and then working to progress that a little bit. And that depends on each individual. That can be, you know, depending on their ability levels. It's not about rushing into anything. It's really about seeing where you're at and then just working on getting a little bit better each time. And I think this one's really important too, is embrace cultural traditions. Western society does not have the monopoly on fitness. Pretty much every culture out there had some sort of intentional training, whether it was body training or more likely it was a combination of body and mind, because a lot of people have realized that they aren't separate entities and they need to be integrated together in order to work. So I've definitely found it interesting in terms of like researching what does fitness, what does training, what does working out look like for different cultures and traditions. And this can be a good way for you to kind of, you know, decolonize what fitness looks like, and kind of take a look at researching into what your ancestors done. And you'll find out that there's something there. I've definitely done some research on this, and there's so much of a rich history of training within communities throughout the entire world that are unfortunately also slowly being appropriated by Western society now, as they realize, oh, wait, these people were onto something a long time ago. Let me take this and now see it as this new trend.
Right. It's really important to survive. I think that of this whole Black folks in our survivor. I think that it's really interesting how much, people would like to emulate that, or how it is kind of disseminated, that kind of way of being and movement. It isn't strictly. There is just like a particular way that Black folks have been moving for like hundreds of years now, that has really shaped our survival, and like shaped not only that, but also into the next part, our own aesthetic. I guess I can talk about that. So define your own aesthetic, and like I think that's the most challenging thing to do as a trans feminine person myself, as a Black trans feminine person. It's really defining my own aesthetic is like has been a challenge, because like, A, like dealing with dysphoria, and then B, like, there's like parts of you that want to be seen as a certain way to the rest of the world, but it's like, what does that mean when the rest of the world is so very dictated by Western domination, and how much of the world is like already defined by anti-Blackness and like transmisogyny and transphobia. It's like, like if we're always having to leave it up to the rest of the world to shape our own aesthetic, we're always going to let ourselves down. So I feel like resisting these norms is, and just embracing like who you are, and embracing like, what you already have. It's like, it's beautiful, it's good. I just think that, that's a really tricky one for me, defining my own aesthetic. And like, I feel like I do definitely have my own aesthetic. And I want to like reiterate that, I found power and esteem in my own aesthetic, but like, there's also like a lot of challenges. So
that could be literally an hour workshop alone right there. Another thing is shifting the language. This is definitely something I've had to work on as someone who is used to being in very normatively masculine spaces. One of the, I guess, putting down of a femininity, like I'm sure most of you have heard the term girl push-ups, which is dropping your knees to the floor. That is one of my biggest pet peeves. I call them a modified push-up, because anyone can use them and has used them, and there are multiple different push-ups, like a specific group. Another thing that's around, there's a lot of fat shaming. There's some people that do want to have goals where they're like, I want to lose fat, and that's to each their own. I think it's important to use words like, I want to do a body recomposition. So then we stop seeing fat as something bad to always want to get rid of, because that's not the same for everyone.
Yeah. No. I'm sorry, everyone. We have like we've been on for an hour but if people don't mind, we're gonna just continue and push through our entire workshop.
We're almost done. We're gonna power through.
We're almost done.
So I think one of the biggest things in this ties into placing an emphasis on performance is acknowledging individual capabilities while still creating community. As someone who's been putting on community groups, training groups for like over 3 years now, this is definitely a huge component, and it's something that I frequently see in gym spaces, in boxing and sports, is that you want to focus on the individual of where creating community that, and not seeing them and not being able to be at the level that someone else is at, or that person at the higher level, understanding that they need to also be encouraging and be respectful of the person who's on a different part in their physical journey currently.
And that also works for their politics as well. It's like, we weren't always as radical as, you know, yeah, we are now. So like, you know, like Michael Meck said, like, just because, well, I don't actually know the exact quote, but like, you know what I mean? Like, in terms of how people, you know, often use the knowledge that they just got like a week ago and be like, oh, no, that's anti-Blackness, or that's, you know, femphobia. And it's like, yeah, like, you have the language now, but you didn't before. So like, maybe being a little bit more, I don't know. But like, also, like, in terms of like respectability politics, I don't necessarily believe that we have to be, when it's a call out. So like, within our community, we're able to call in, you know, people. Like, within community, there are ways that we can, you know, have conversations with one another versus like people we don't know, like the cops or politicians who, yeah, like, might be a little bit more in different positions of authority, that we're willing to call out. And next is question the expert. So for me, I hold this in high regard because I'm not an expert, and I really want to deprofessionalize the revolution. So like, I think, like, you know, for me, like, I think that decentralization of knowledge is really, really important. So like, but I do think, like, when it comes to expertise, that me as an individual, as a Black, trans, Filipinx, Indigenous, gender nonconforming, femme person is going to be an expert on my body, is going to know, you know, when I'm feeling, you know, slut shamed, is going to know when transphobia or femphobia is happening to me. Like, so trust in yourself. And then, yeah, question everything else.
Yeah, experts, you have to remember, experts have that label because the audience gives it to them.
Don't give it to them.
Or they have to earn it. You know, but also understanding that we're people and we're going to make mistakes and not everyone knows everything. But at the same time, if someone has knowledge that you're like, man, I can really put that to use, put it to use. I mean, that's what a lot of what I use is from. There's a lot of experts that I don't believe, I mean, very few fitness people are involved in politics at all. So I'm not really in agreement with a lot of their stuff. But a lot of the knowledge that, I mean, pretty much all the knowledge I have out there in terms of like strength and conditioning and training is based off these experts. So I'm basically ripping away the knowledge they have and then repackaging it with my lens and my experiences to come up with Buff Butch. All right, so if you're at a point where you're like, so apparently I did that wrong. If you're really interested in being involved in a training process and you're really not sure what to do, we do have resources out there, such as the strength training for activists that you may have seen circulating out. But if you want to take it to the next level and really focus on a fitness course for your self-care, we do have a course that me and Edxie have put together. It's an 8-week course. You'll get 4 weeks of me demonstrating, and then you get 4 weeks of Edxie demonstrating. And it's really focused on self-care. It's more of a fitness tutorial rather than a workout. We really take you through the smallest progression so you actually know what you're doing, and then we slowly build up from there. It's not about trying to drop someone in the deep waters right away. It's just trying to slowly integrating them into their body and working on movements. For the 8-week course, there's 3 done-for-you workouts per week, and you have lifetime access to it. We're really trying to get this out in terms of summer so people have an affordable option to be able to focus on their body. This is also something that doesn't involve having to go to a gym space. All you need is a chair. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me pop this off so you can take a gander at our faces real quick.
And also, I think the importance of, like, when it comes to, yeah, the fitness, if you're in Los Angeles, we do have like quarterly meetups with each other every, like in the fall time. And just like, workout groups that support one another. I really need that. I really like appreciate different like collective workout groups, because that is just fun and like it brings you together, and like you can talk and chat and like kiki. But also, yeah, if you're in another city, create your own. I think it's really, like we were saying, like it's really good to like be in community with like other people who are like you. Ours are particularly for queer, trans, gender nonconforming, intersex, people of color. So those are our spaces. Those spaces are important. Those spaces are sacred. So like, yeah, create your own if you're in another city, or like, you know, encourage other people to do this. We also have like the boxing training that's coming up really soon in Los Angeles sometime in July or August, where we're gonna be like learning how to box. And that's another, yeah, and that Pat's really good at.
I want to kind of give this as of what we're aiming to do, because this is really our first like online appearance together like this, and we're really looking on building out a community and a resource that will be beyond just the working out, but being a space sometimes to just talk about these type of things. I've found when I do these workshops, people are like, I've never been able to have a space to discuss these things, and I think it's really important that we queer up every aspect of our life as much as possible. So we're going to be continuing to roll out a lot of content for you, a lot of webinars like this. We're going to be offering support for people who will be trying to start up groups similarly like we're doing in Los Angeles. You know, we're here to help you as much as possible. And also let us know. You've got an email from us, shoot me an email, shoot me a Facebook message. Let us know what you need from us specifically, and we'll try to find our best to help our community as much as possible, because that's really what this project is about, is taking the knowledge that we have and the experiences we have and meeting you where you're at, and creating an actual space and container for us to be in our bodies, which I think is really rare in this day and age. So unless you want to add anything else, Edxie, thank you so much for joining us for our first webinar. Got the first one out of the way. We're going to keep building from here, and be looking forward to seeing you on our mailing list as we send out stuff, and also on our Facebook page. And hopefully you'll be seeing us again really soon on video. So take care.